Good morning, everyone, and a huge welcome to the University of Dundee's online Open Day. We're absolutely delighted that you've given up some of your Saturday morning to come and hear about the history programme here at the University of Dundee. So over the next kind of 45-50 minutes or so, we'll give you an overview of what we offer. I will tell you about the content of the course, but I've also got two fantastic students on the call as well who will give you their insights. So just as a way of introduction, my name is Dr. Matt Graham. I'm a senior lecturer in history with a particular focus on Africa, but I'm also the senior admissions officer for the School of Humanities. So if you've got any questions about the application process, please feel free to ask. And as you may have seen, I've put a little comment in the Q&A box. So if you've got any questions about the course or about student life, please put them in there and we'll either answer them through the presentation via typing them out, or we'll answer them at the end. So I'll just let the two students kind of introduce themselves. So we'll start with Moy, and then go to John.
Hi, I'm Moy. I'm going to third year doing history and film, and yeah, I'm also on the History Society too, which is quite fun.
Hi, I'm John. I'm just going to third year doing history and politics, and I'm also on the History Society committee.
And at the end of the presentation, we will be talking about the History Society. So it's an excellent part of the provision here, and it's amazing to have two people who are integral to the running of it. Okay, so to start, just to let you know that Dundee is an excellent place for your education. I mean, I'm not going to bore you with statistics, but I just want to reassure you that choosing Dundee as one of your options for your education is a really good choice. We're in the top 20 universities in the UK, according to The Guardian. In terms of your graduate prospects after you finish your 4 years at Dundee, we're ranked first in Scotland. And also really importantly about kind of student satisfaction, about how the graduating cohorts think about their courses. Dundee ranks 11th in the entire of the UK. So again, a really kind of proud set of kind of statistics, but also things that really show the quality of what we do. But also for you as prospective students, we also received something called the TEF Gold Award. We're one of a handful of universities across Britain that got this, and again that demonstrates the quality of teaching that we offer, which also means that that reflects on the experience you'll get throughout your learning. So why study history at Dundee? Now, I think there's multiple reasons, and we'll cover many of these in more detail as the presentation goes on. So first of all, we're a relatively small department, so roughly 13 members of staff, but we cover a huge geographic and time span in our course provision. But this kind of close-knit team offer world-class teaching, which I'll mention on the next slide or two. And I think this really enables you to get the most out of your education because we are here to help you. I think that's a really big part of what we do. And in terms of kind of the makeup of the history degree, we have students from all over the world, obviously from Scotland and the UK more broadly, but also from Europe, North America, and also much further afield. So it really means that we've got a great melting pot of people in our classes, which really adds to the provision here at Dundee. Now, what I'm going to let you do actually is I'm going to get the students to talk about this because this is how they experience Dundee, and I'll back up anything they say. So I'll hand you over first to John, then to Moy, and they can talk about anything on this slide.
Yeah, so what I found really attractive about coming to Dundee in the first place when I went to these open days was the open door policy, where lecturers and tutors are really accessible all the time, and it's true. I mean, literally the door is open, you can go in and talk, and more virtually, I guess, with COVID, I suppose. If you send that an email during working hours, they'll get back to you really quickly and actually help you out with anything you might need or any sort of question. And there's also office hours as well, so scheduled times where you can go and help. But lectures are always accessible, and that's really helpful. if you're finding your degree challenging at all. So yeah, that's really useful, that one.
I think like what John's saying is like so true. Like they're always there for you. And another thing is that I think because everything's basically on campus, it's easy to find and it's very accessible. And if you're lost, someone's always there to like show you the direction or something, which is always handy. And like there's like the Special Inquiry Centre, which if you do have a problem, it's right there in the middle of campus. It's so easy to find and they can help you with literally any problem. As well as I think by having things like closer together, it's like also in the centre, like basically in the centre of town. So you're not far away from anything compared to I feel like other universities where they're further afield from the city that they're in, or they can be like harder to get to. So I think just the location itself and the close-knit that was kind of described earlier really does kind of like add to like a studenty like academic vibe, which is what you kind of look for in a university, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have about 80 to 100 history students every year. And it means because we are a small team is that we get to know you and you get to know us. I think that makes a really big difference in terms of how the community feels, but also about the teaching experience that you'll have. And this is also broken down into kind of small groups, and the largest class you'll have will be on campus of about 20. So it means that you've always got opportunities to work on particular tasks in your tutorials and also ask questions. Again, you're very much part of a community here at Dundee. Now, I said earlier that we have an award-winning teaching team, and I have some evidence to back it up, as you know, like a good historian should. And so every year there is something called the Student-Led Teaching Awards, where across the University of Dundee, students get to nominate members of staff for various categories. It can be feedback, excellence in teaching, innovation, or what have you. Every single year, the history team are nominated for their contributions to the university. But also pretty much every other year, one of us wins it. So as you can see from the slide, just there's some of the testimonials from students who nominated myself, but also my colleague Martine in the last year or so. So I think it's really a key part of what we offer is that we backs up what John and Moy have said, is that we really care about our student community here, and this has a really positive feel for what we do, and you'll be taught by excellent teachers. In terms of the program, we offer a comprehensive program that kind of begins kind of in the 1500s, give or take, and runs pretty much up to the contemporary era. So from the early modern through to kind of the late 20th century. And within this, we have a multitude of courses. So you could follow a kind of Scottish history route, focusing on Scottish and British history. But also you can focus on European, North American, but also global history. So you can do a bit of African history, a bit of Indian history, a bit of Latin American history if you wanted. So the nice thing is that you can either kind of follow kind of pathways and routes through our degree, but also you can specialize in particular topics. So there might be things you've already studied at school or high school or college that you want to continue doing, and hopefully we offer that already. But also it's an opportunity to do something new, maybe like studying African history. And as part of this, our teaching is led by our research. So the academic staff are all working on books and articles at any given point. And the work that we do is then part and parcel of our teaching provision. And I'll talk about this later on in the presentation. But as you can see from the slide there, just these are some of the books that have come out in the last couple of years. Because this is my presentation, I'm going to give myself center stage there. So if you look right in the middle, you can see my book on contemporary Africa. It is available at all good bookshops. But I mean, I'm only kidding. But the point is that this research and the stuff that we do directly leads into the teaching and ensures that you get the most up-to-date debates and also perspectives on the past. And I mentioned a moment ago that we have a global syllabus. Here I have created a map with some pinpoints across it. And I'm just going to let Moy and John talk a little bit about some of the classes they've done, or some of the classes that they hope to do through this. So Moy first, and then John, would you like to speak about what we have on our map?
Yeah, so I remember back in first year taking the rise of Atlantic empires. I remember that being really interesting, learning, and I never learned about it in school at all. And from the period of it was the 1500s up to the mid 1700s, and definitely knew nothing about that beforehand, and how these European countries started their invasion of taking over indigenous places in South America and so forth. And it's really interesting to see how from that time period what's changed and its input, and it's what's done to our modern day. As well as in that module we had an archive trip, which was really fun, going down underneath one of the tower building and getting to see artifacts and papers and stuff in that time period too. That was really good.
Yeah, well, I think it was really good about the modules. Is also, I think my business is now, so hello. Yeah, well, I think it's good about the modules is they link together quite well. So after you finish doing the rise of Atlantic empires, as Moy was talking about, in level 2 you go into imperialism and decolonization, which builds on that module and then talks about what happens after what happened before, and that chronological kind of development of what you're learning about is really helpful to but have a broader knowledge of that quite a long time period, and also see how one thing can lead to another and so on. Another really good module is Scotland and the wider world module, because it really contextualizes Scotland's place in the world. So we're quite a small country, but and you wouldn't think how much of an impact Scots have had on the world, or how far they've went, and things like this. But yeah, there's a lot of how far it went, literally physically going around the place. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting modules here, for sure.
Fantastic, thank you. And basically, as you can see, that even if we take a local topic, we try to put it into its global context. And again, just reinforcing what John and Moy have said is basically helping you to expand your understanding and knowledge of a particular historical time frame, but also join the dots together. And especially in the first year modules, we do field trips to places like the V&A Museum in the centre of Dundee. We go to the Botanical Gardens. We even go to one of the cemeteries as well, to show you the the positionality of Dundee, and also the reasons as to why certain things happen to be in this city, be it the urban architecture to the flora and fauna in the Botanical Gardens. So why Dundee as well? So we'll talk more about the history programme later on in the presentation. But for those of you who have not been to Dundee before, or have only passed through it briefly, it is an amazing city. I'm personally from Birmingham. I moved up to Scotland 9 years ago, and I must admit Dundee is a wonderful little city. As you can see from the quote there from The Lonely Planet, it says perhaps the finest location of any Scottish city. And as you can see from the picture, there is the estuary, the River Tay, running through the middle of the city, with lots of open space, but also a quite bustling urban centre too. Now, the way that I experience the city is obviously very different from those of the students. So what I'm going to do is pass you back over to start with Moy, and to just give you your insights into what it's like living in Dundee, and also some of the reasons as to why you picked Dundee as your choice of location.
I really like Dundee. I'm from like Edinburgh anyway, so it's not too far away, which I quite enjoy. And the size of the city is lovely, and nothing feels on. It's not too big and it's not too small. You still have like space to easily walk basically everywhere, but you're like also so close to the Cairngorms and the Highlands, and then not too far away from like the other big cities like Glasgow and Edinburgh. It's also the sunniest city in Scotland, and I think you do need that serotonin and vitamin D boost every so often when you're in your room all the time. So and just walking along the Tay is such a lovely, like, content feeling. It's amazing, and yeah.
Yeah, and as you can see from a couple of the stats on the slide, Dundee really is an up and coming city, and it feels like that when you're here as well. So like, you know, the new V&A and waterfront development, there's a lot of new work and new money coming into Dundee, and it really is a beautiful city. So there's a lot of new exciting things happening. Apparently there's a video games arena going to be built and a massive Eden project, like, I don't know, massive like rewilding thing happening as well. But either way, there's a lot of interest in Dundee, and it is a really cool place. And like Moy said, the view from the Tay of the War at Night, which is the bottom picture there, the view from the Law as well, which is a big hill in the middle of Dundee. It is a really nice place to live in, and it's student focused as well, with like the location of like pubs and restaurants, which are cheaper for students as well, if you get like the discounts from societies as well. So yeah, it is a really good place for students to live in.
Thank you so much. Yeah, there are 2 universities in Dundee, which means that 15% of the population are essentially under the age of 25, which means that, as both John and Moy said, there's a lot of stuff geared up towards students. So it might be a small city, but there's a lot going on here. And as you can see from a couple of the quotes there, it was voted the best place to live in Scotland, and also the coolest small city in the entire of Britain. So again, these are accolades that we are very proud of, but also means that when you come to Dundee, it means that you'll have a great time living here. And also, I think really importantly is I appreciate that coming to university is an expense both in time and also money. And Dundee is one of the cheapest university cities in the entire of the UK as well. So I think that's also a really good aspect for you when thinking about your future choices. And kind of backing up what Moy and John have already said, is that Dundee is kind of going places. And as you can see from a couple of those quotes there on the board, is that other people around the world are taking note. And so in the last couple of years, major international publications like the Wall Street Journal or the National Geographic have ranked Dundee alongside places like the Faroe Islands, Shanghai, or even Antarctica. I mean those are quite diverse places, but again, it demonstrates to you the ways in which people are seeing and experiencing Dundee. And I think it's a really exciting time to be part of this city. And for those of you who watched any HBO TV recently, you may have spotted Dundee on the TV series Secession, where you can see parts of the V&A, you can see bits of the university, and also a large open space really close to the university called Magdalen Green. And Brian Cox, who is a Dundee-born actor who stars in it, has said that Dundee is emerging into this rather extraordinary place. So again, it's really nice to know that people are going, leaving Dundee and like spreading the good word about our city. So in terms of the university and its kind of situation in the city, as Moy has already said, is that it is really close to the city centre. It takes 5 minutes to walk from university to town. And so even though you've got this campus, which is self-enclosed, everything is close together, it also means that you're easily able to kind of get in and around the city too. On campus, you would have all the facilities you could expect. You've got accommodation, you've got student union, you've got library, you've got teaching facilities. And also, because it's quite compact, is that you'll see all your friends. I'm sure you cannot walk across the campus without bumping into people that you know. And one of the things that I like being a member of staff here, because there is a friendly feel and a real community vibe going on, is that students will often stop and talk to me as I'm walking between classes. So I think that actually it means that you get to know the students, but also again means that you can ask questions outside of the classroom as well. Another thing which we'll talk about a little bit later on is that Dundee is a relatively new university. We're just over 50 years old. Now, compared to some other universities which have 600 plus years of history, because we are so new, we're able to do new things and we try new things. So this is why there is such an emphasis on the student experience, which is obviously a benefit to you, to the teaching that we offer, but also to the kind of things that we'll try in our teaching. So we'll try and integrate new methods. Don't get me wrong, we're not throwing out all the kind of good work of the past. So we do obviously build upon that, but we try new things, and I'll talk a little bit about those later on in the presentation. Now, as part of a history degree, you will obviously need to do some reading, and fear not, the university has all the resources that you could possibly want to succeed in your education. Again, the way in which I use the library and the facilities is very different to that of the students, so I'm going to hand you over to the students so they can talk a little bit about the library, the online facilities, the archives, or what have you.
Okay. Oh, the library, it is amazing. There's like 3 different floors, and I guess as you go up it gets quieter, and there's on each floor there's still like a group space where you can kind of like chat with your friends but still get work done, don't get me wrong. And there's also a cafe in there too, so if you're staying up late and need that caffeine boost, it's not that far to just quickly run back downstairs and get yourself something. And you always like see people like wearing blankets and getting all cozy in the library. It's quite wholesome. And there's like the library have like their like online stuff too, so if you're trying to like find a book, you can just like search it up and you'll be able to find where it is in the library, as well as if they don't have it available, they can put it on hold for you or even try get it in for you at a later date, which is so good when you want to find this like specific paper or book for like a essay or just like for some extra knowledge, which definitely helps.
Yeah, definitely. And the actual design like of the building as well is really useful as well, because there's like different levels in the library. So on like the ground floor, as Moy was saying, there's the cafe and like a general sort of study space with computers and so on, and that's for like kind of like talkative study if you're doing like group work and so on. And you can also book out like, have you seen the top picture, the wee like room that says like Europe on it? Yeah, that's one of like the bookable study spaces in the library. So if you're doing group work, presentations, which you do in history, that's quite useful there. And then when you go up the levels in the library, it goes to quiet study, then silent study at the top floor. So when you're walking around, you're a little bit scared that you're going to disturb anyone up on that floor. But yeah, it's good because if you've got different, study styles, if you like to talk about or like to be completely silent, then the library caters for that as well.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, the library is an excellent facility, and building upon what both Moy and John said, it's also really responsive to you. So if you are looking for stuff, it does seek them out for you quickly. And if there's like say a book or something like that that they don't have, they'll look to get it in within a week. Also, I should say is every module has something called My Dundee, which is a virtual learning environment, which has the kind of the lecture PowerPoints and recordings. It has your seminar tasks and also kind of any other interesting materials. So it means that just as long as you've got a internet connection wherever you are in the world, it means you can access the resources that you require. And also connected to that is something called the reading list tool, which means that every module and every tutor will tell you what you need to read for that week, which is essential, and then other recommended reading perhaps for your assignments as well. And a lot of the material, particularly since the pandemic, has been digitalized as well, so there is less kind of strain on resources for you. So I think that's a really, really positive element of it, because it means that there is kind of essentially the world's knowledge at your fingertips. Okay, so what we're going to now do is talk a little bit about the structure and the content of the history degree for the kind of last 20 minutes or so of this presentation. Now, I think the first thing to explain to you is the actual structure of the MA degree at Dundee. So your degree is split over 4 years. The first 2 years are called sub-honours, and your latter 2 years are called your honours years. Now, at sub-honours, this is where you come into the university, and it gives you an opportunity to study the topic that you're interested in. So as you're at this presentation, I'm assuming history might be one of them, but it also gives you some options to study other things. So as you can see on the board is that you pick 6 modules, 3 in semester 1, which goes from September to Christmas, and then you do another 3, which goes from January through until Easter. And actually, I'm going to both Moy and John are doing different subjects. So would you like to talk a little bit about your journey through sub-honours and about the sorts of things you studied and had an opportunity to take during these first 2 years? So Moy, would you like to start?
Yeah, so I actually came to Dundee doing just like history, and then what I think is great about like any humanities subject is that like the amount of flexibility you have to go between different modules and like degree pathways. And then by the end of like first year, I was like, I really like enjoyed doing English. So I was like, oh, I'll do like English and history. And then, well, by the end of second year, kind of realized that it's history and film is what I'm wanting to do. And even though I felt really awkward messaging my advisor again about changing what my degree was going to be, they're so accommodating and will like literally make like anything, like try to make everything possible for you to do, because they just want you to succeed in what it is you're interested and passionate about. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, what's really good about the structure is that you do get to try new things, new modules that you maybe wouldn't have thought about taking before coming to uni. Like I did a philosophy module last year. I don't do it now, but it was interesting learning about it and seeing maybe I could do this. There's a lot of flexibility. I actually applied and got into uni just on politics. That was my course, but then I picked up history and really liked it, and then now I do history and politics. So yeah, you can really like just try different modules, and then if you like them, you can make that part of your degree, and that's what's really great about the MA structure.
I think Moy and John have said it better than I possibly could, in the sense that it's about flexibility. It's about designing a degree pathway that works for you. Because again, doing a degree is about time, and we want you to succeed. And we really do want you to succeed. So therefore, making sure that you have the right options and you have the right tools to get where you want to be is absolutely fundamental to us. So first and second year is about experimenting, trying new things, as well as gaining those skills in your chosen topic or topics, depending on what you enter into the university studying. And I should say that at first and second year that we obviously need you to pass, but the grades do not count towards your final degree outcome. And this is the same for every university in Scotland. But as both Moy and John have said, is that by the end of second year, if you want to change into a different subject or add different subjects, it might be a language, it might be something like philosophy, it might be English, it could be politics, what have you, then we allow you to do that. So again, it's about flexibility and opportunity. When you move into level 3 and level 4, this is when you begin to specialise in particular topics. So each year, the academic staff will put on a series of modules. You get to select what you want to do. And again, this might either be, say, focusing on a more Scottish pathway, or it might be on just doing a bit more general history. So lots of opportunity and also lots of flexibility. So one of the key things we really emphasise here at Dundee is this doing history. I mean, I know it sounds really corny, but actually we want you to begin the process of being a historian. So from the very first class in level 1, we start bringing in documents either from the archives, as you can see from the pictures on the slide, or we give you digitalized materials so you can begin to analyze them. So again, it's really about making you understand the historian's process, making you think about why certain materials are the way they are, but also the key thing about history at university, it's not about me or my colleagues telling you how it is. It's about debate and about interpretation. Again, I'm full of corny kind of sayings, but for example, if all of us saw the same film today, we would almost certainly have different views on the quality of the storyline, on the production, on the actors or the director or what have you. We've seen exactly the same information, but come to different interpretations. Therefore, when we think about history and we're looking at documents and looking at the primary sources, is that we'll have different interpretations too. So again, it's about making you think about why you have that analysis and that perspective on a particular issue. And we really get you to think about this within your classes. I mean, Moy, John, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, I feel like you're encouraged to act a bit like a detective in a way when you're doing your history. And what's because what's different about history is not just reading a book and then getting a quote from someone and then that's your evidence. You're looking at primary sources, like what actually was recorded at the time. So as you can see in these pictures, the students are looking at archive material that the university has, because it has an archive, which is great. So you're encouraged to look at, and all of this stuff is digitized as well, but we can also go into the archive and look at these items, and you're encouraged to kind of try and find sources that will back up or take away from your argument. It's not just written in a book somewhere and you just get it all from there. You're finding this and that, and it was quite fun actually, to be honest.
Yeah, also you have the tutorials, which I think are great to expand on your ideas, and you're chatting to your peers about maybe you think differently about something, but it's so good hearing people's other perspectives and even talking to them after class about it. Because I know I did that a few times, and I gained so much from talking to people in my class about what they thought and brainstorming almost. It's really good having these small tutorial groups as a result of everything you've been learning that week as well, to just get more ideas and to hone in on what you believe as well, which is always handy.
Absolutely. I mean, this kind of collaborative learning is a crucial part of what we encourage here at Dundee. So yeah, it's about the sharing of information, it's about working with one another, and also coming up with different perspectives based on the materials. I should also say that, as John mentioned, is that while we have the archives at Dundee and we also use the city archives as well, is that we also use digitalized materials. So for example, as a South African historian, I have not yet been able to persuade the university to give me money to take the students on a trip to Cape Town yet, but we have excellent digitalized archives, so it's different skills which are actually really useful both in the present as a student, but also into the future, whatever career you do as well. So you get the physical experience, but also you get the digital experience as well. And as I've already been saying, and as well as the students too, is that basically it's what we as the academic staff research feeds into the teaching, and then it means that you are part and parcel of whatever the kind of cutting edge debates are at that time. Again, it sounds quite cheesy that you're at the kind of the forefront of history, but that is the truth. You're being taught by leading world experts on that subject, but also as part of the discussions that we have in class, you are providing your opinions, and we want you to challenge us. We want you to provide different interpretations. That's part of the fun of what we do, but also allows you to be part and parcel of this process. So in terms of the actual teaching and learning within the history program at Dundee, it changes from level 1 through until level 4. But in level 1, what you have is you have your 3 modules that you've selected. Each one will have a couple of lectures a week, which at the moment, due to the pandemic, have been distilled into 3 20-minute podcasts. So this is basically a video of basically something like we're doing right now, where one of the staff will have a PowerPoint up, we'll chat about some concepts or some ideas, But the great thing is it means that you can listen to it whenever you want. You can go back to it, so you can be in the park or in the library or wherever. But you can actually go back to the content. And then connected to that, as Moy was saying, you have your workshop or tutorial or seminar. They mean the same thing, but we use the word interchangeably. But basically, this is where in your groups you are discussing a particular materials, and this also gives you that chance to really kind of push forward again your ideas, your debates, your findings. And then by the time we get to level 4, it will be generally 2-hour seminars a week, where that really is kind of very much about student-focused debate and content. In terms of assessments, you get to do lots of different assessments. Some modules have very traditional, kind of they go essay and exam, but others have lots of other different things. So, I mean, very briefly, Moy, John, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the assessments that you've done? I mean, unfortunately, I know that you have to do some assessments through the 4 years to get your degree, but are any that are really like kind of stuck out, or some things that you've enjoyed doing that might be a bit different?
One of the things that actually drew me to like Dundee was the way it worked in first and second year. Like I remember actually coming to the open day, and I was like, oh, that's actually quite cool. And I remember speaking to like the girls that were like standing at the front about it afterwards. And basically, the way it works in like first year is you do these like weekly module journals, and you like something like 500 words or so in like the first semester. And you kind of just write about what's been happening, that you're kind of given like a broad question or area to talk about, and you kind of just write about it, and you put your own input and feelings into it too. And it's not like necessarily graded on like that week, but you get loads of really good feedbacks when it comes to like actually submitting this like collective piece of all your module entries. You've had time to listen to what your tutor has said, improved and made it better, which I think is so helpful rather than just like writing like one essay and that's like your final draft kind of thing. And it slowly got you prepared for what the rest of, I think, like the teaching and essay writing is like at uni, definitely for history. And if it wasn't for that, I think I would definitely not feel as confident and happy writing essays as I don't mind doing now.
Yeah, definitely. I think what was really important about what Moy was saying was like the feedback is so helpful, especially like during the first semester with the regular journals. You're getting constant feedback, and it's really helpful. And even on essays, the feedback you get from your lecturers is really useful, helping you to improve, because that's what it's all about, really. And then, as you'll see down there, there's a couple of interesting looking assessments which you might not have thought would be an assessment. But so for the module I'm just about to do, a maths module, Contemporary African History, part of the assessment is doing a wiki project and like literally editing a Wikipedia page. So it's really about putting your learning into practice, which is what is really good about Dundee.
Fantastic, yeah. I mean, so lots of different opportunities, some really novel and interesting things, and also, yeah, constant feedback to ensure that you succeed and also get the most out of your degree. And this goes back to things we were saying right at the start of the presentation about us being an accessible team, and also one that really cares about your progression. Now, I should point out that this will not be your personal timetable, because it will change depending on the modules that you select. But this is just an idea of what it might look like. So as you can see, the kind of the lectures which would have been on campus, but now as they are in on kind of podcasts, generally to the start of the week, giving you time to think about it, go to the library and work on particular materials. And then towards the end of the week, you'll get your 2-hour workshops where you are debating particular issues. So kind of roughly in the kind of the first part of the of your degree, you kind of get between 9 and 12 hours a week contact time, depending on your selections. But then also the free time that you can see is there for you to go to the library and to work on assignments and preparation. Something we will talk about later on is societies, the History Society, but Wednesdays are blanked out across the university for sports and societies. Now, I appreciate time is ticking, so I won't spend too much time going through every single one of the modules. And Moy and John have already mentioned some of these already. But the first class that you would do would be the Rise of Atlantic Empires, which really is your introduction to Dundee, introduction to the kind of content that we offer, and basically starts in the 1500s. And as Moy rightly said earlier, goes to 1750. And this is about the European empires at the time: Britain, France, Netherlands, the Dutch, Portuguese, their interventions in Latin America and also North America, and also the ways in which there was resistance and also cultural collaborations and what have you. So really going to look at the kind of way in which kind of the beginning of the imperial age began. I mean, Moy, John, do you want to say anything briefly about this class?
Well, it's really interesting, like, comparing different empires, because as you can see, there's quite a few there up on the screen, and it's just interesting seeing how they did things differently, each one. And also, as Matt was saying, the engagement with you know, the people that the colonists encountered on land that they just discovered, the way like they interacted with each other, sometimes in more collaborative ways, sometimes much less so. But it's interesting just learning about that. It's a really good module.
Okay. The second class that you do is the Age of Revolution, 1750 to 1850. And essentially, within this 100-year period, name a revolution and we cover it. So there'll be some of the more high-profile ones that you may have heard about or studied at high school. So this might be the French Revolution or the American Revolution. But we also then focus on things like the Haitian Revolution, where the Caribbean island fought back against French imperial might. But we also go beyond the political and think about kind of cultural, social, and also technological as well. So we look at the Enlightenment, we look at the Industrial Revolution, and get to think about what is a revolution? What does it mean? The term is often massively overused, but actually what we try to do is get you to think about, do things actually change? And if they do, in what ways? Again, John, Moy, I mean, I personally don't teach on this class, so again, any quick thoughts or views on this?
I really enjoyed this module. It was kind of a shame though for us in first year. It was almost cut short because of the whole pandemic, but it's great how it really did lead on from the previous module with the Rise of Atlantic Empires, because you kind of see the foundations for why, like, not like discontent doesn't even describe what was going on, but how intense it was and the oppression. It's also really cool that we didn't just look at like straight up like wars and like the idea of like the Industrial Revolution and the Enlightenment, and I really enjoy like learning about the Enlightenment in general, so it was nice to go back and learn about that and how each week you're learning something different. And though it seems quite fast-paced that you you still get enough time to really like learn about each individual kind of topic, which definitely helps to writing essays and stuff and so forth.
Thank you. We also have another class which is a team tour across the entire School of Humanities called Making Memory, and this is about the way in which individual, collective memories are created and constructed, and so staff from English, film, philosophy and history all contribute to this this topic, and we also think about what memory actually means, the power of memory as well, and also the silences that we have in our own histories, either individually or collectively, and what these might mean for particular communities and also marginalized peoples. So again, really important to make you think about what memory is and also the power that it can have. In level 2, I think I've quickly skipped over that one. Scotland and the wider world. I think John mentioned this earlier on, and this is about Scots' position in kind of global affairs, and also the ways in which people from the country went to North America, to Australia, New Zealand, and to South Africa. But again, it's not just about the impact that Scots had elsewhere. It's also again about kind of cultural influences coming back. Just, you know, your little historical fact for today is that there is a place in South Africa called Dundee, which was named by the Dundonians who fought was part of the British Empire at the time. And so again, there is that kind of connection where on the face of it, you might think, why is there a Dundee in South Africa? Well, this is the very reason why. And why is this? Sorry, there we go, sorry. Okay, so our level, don't know what happened there. Then by the time you get to level 3 and level 4, you have a range of modules. These are some of the ones that are being run this year. As you can see, a range of historical and geographic topics from around the world. As I say, they change each year depending on what is being offered, but there is always a nice mix of things for you to study, and also again allowing for either focus or more generalized kind of modes of inquiry, so to speak. By the time you get to 4th year, you do a dissertation, which is 10,000 words. I know that sounds huge at the moment, but this is your part of being a historian. All the skills that you've developed over the 4 years at the university kind of culminate in the research dissertation. And this can be kind of on anything you want it to be, just as long as there is source materials for you to use, and also a member of staff for you to be supervised by, pretty much anything. And the pictures on the screen there actually do represent some of the things that we've had people look at. So one student about 2 years ago now, his granddad had been part of the Home Guard up near Arbroath, and so used the kind of personal collections that he had there to talk about the Home Guard in Scotland. We had one on the miniskirt in the 1960s and its power of cultural change. And we've had one or two on kind of sport and reconciliation in South Africa. So basically, it's about you bringing your research interests to kind of a final point and also producing a quality bit of work. Now, we promised at the start of the presentation that you'd hear more about the History Society, and the History Society is an excellent it's an excellent group of students. It's entirely student led, and so I'm going to hand you over to Moy and John to talk a little bit about the society.
Okay, so I am this like social secretary and basically I think all the Instagram posts and whatnot for the History Society. We actually recently just had a pub quiz in the Braes where we also hold our weekly meetings. So that was great for the first time in ages, managing to see loads of people and getting involved and hopefully meeting potential new members, as well as today is the Freshers Fair. So I think we're both excited and looking forward to try and get people to sign up. But yeah, we hold different events throughout the year, different trips. I think quite like an iconic one from like last year, the year before was the like Edinburgh Castle, as well as when we have our ball, which is always a good time. So fingers crossed we can do stuff similar to that this year and beyond.
Yeah, it's really fun. Really kind of relaxed society, and it's a really good way to meet people on your course. So then you can have, yeah, it's good. Sign up if you come.
So yeah, so the great thing about History Society is it's entirely student run. All the events are put on by the committee, and also they are in response to the demands from the society as well. So as Moy said, there's trips to Edinburgh Castle or Donata, as you can see up there. There's quizzes and what have you, and the staff also get involved whenever they're asked. So I think in a few weeks' time I'm doing a study skills session, and also we also come to the quizzes and things like that. So we do get involved, and a great way to meet people, and it's another really lively part of what we offer here at Dundee. Now, as we come to the end of the presentation, we'll talk a little bit about the future of what you would do with your history degree. Now, I appreciate you haven't decided that you're going to do a history degree, nor whether you'll pick Dundee yet, but just to really emphasise what Dundee will offer for you if you choose the history degree here. As you can see from the board, a whole range of excellent and also really necessary skills that you will require for the future world of work. Now, many of these things do not seem to be necessarily that obvious, but actually many employers and particularly the way the economy is now, looking for kind of high tech and solution problem solving. The history degree is very much part and parcel of that. So every week we're asking you to synthesize material. We're asking you to write or speak your thoughts clearly and concisely. We want you to have arguments. Every week we get you to problem solve through primary sources or particular activities. And also we want you to research and utilize large amounts of material and distill it and analyze it for its key points, so that you or your peers can gain from that. We also hopefully make you confident and intellectually engaged young people. Both John and Moya here on the call now, publicly speaking to you, and these are the kind of things that we really need you to kind of get through your degree and also help you into the future as well. But also we get you to be creative in the way that you do things. So it's not just about writing an essay, it is about the different activities, the different assignments that really help you get to where you want to be. So basically it's about you marketing these skills to the professions that you want to go into. And I should say that not all our graduates go on to become historians, and actually the history degree does not limit your options. Unless you want to be an engineer, then you're obviously in the wrong call today. But the history degree provides you with, I say, all those skills that were on the previous slide, and also allows you to think, again, a bit more boldly, think creatively about where you want to be. So, I mean, I finished my undergraduate degree, I mean, it's now 15 years ago, so it seems like an eternity. But in those preceding years, like my friends from my history degree are doing anything and everything. So I'm one of the odd ones out that I carried on doing history all the way through to becoming a lecturer. But others work in research, work in accountancy, work in law, others are teachers, others run their own businesses, someone work for NGOs. Essentially, you kind of name it and they work for those kind of companies. So again, it's about seeking out those opportunities. And I should say that most graduate jobs do not ask for a specific degree discipline. So for example, the civil service fast stream does not ask for a history degree. It just asks for a good degree. So again, the history degree is obviously one of those. But also Dundee's employability figures are excellent. So if you do choose Dundee, then hopefully you'll be where you want to end up. So after a year, we do a survey. And as you can see there, following graduation, we are first in Scotland and 14th in the UK for our employment statistics. So again, we're very proud that our graduates get to where they want to be following the end of their studies. Just a couple of case studies on the board. Felix, he graduated a couple of years back now. He took a paid internship, went to Southern Africa in Botswana and ended up working for SADC, which is their regional version of essentially the EU. Carleen is now a history and modern studies teacher here in Dundee, and Andy went on to become the property manager at Culloden Battlefield. So again, showing you three very different case studies, three different examples, and three different and exciting careers, which are potentially open to you. So finally, to conclude, just think about the importance of history. I've got a couple of quotes on the board. Winston Churchill was the MP for Dundee. I should say Dundonians hated him and he hated Dundee, so it was obviously a marriage made in heaven. So it's not a gratuitous link here, but as you can see from his quote, is the farther backwards you can look, the farther forward you're likely to see. So about positionality and about thinking about the past and about making things better in the future. And Nelson Mandela, who is one of my personal heroes, but also not a gratuitous link, because Dundee gave Nelson Mandela the freedom of the city in 1985. He argued that the past cannot be undone, it can only be transformed in the present. So on that note, thank you very much for listening. And if you've got any questions, we've got 2 or 3 minutes before we have to go on to the next one. And I'm just seeing what questions there are in the Q&A. So Freya, you have asked, what are we looking for in the personal statement? Okay, so what we do is we look for essentially 3 things. We look for 1, your interest in the subject. So talk a little bit about what interests you about history. think also about potentially some of the academic aspects of history as well. So it's not just like I really enjoy going to see historical sites, which is obviously fantastic, but also talk a little bit about what interests you about the study of history as well. And then we also want to see what you've done either in school or college or in your kind of extracurricular activities. That might be your part-time job, it might be through sports, it might be through societies. So basically we want to see, first of all, what it is that interests you about history. Then we want to see about the things that you've done and the skills that you have from those that might contribute towards your degree. So it might be teamwork, it might be responsibility, it might be working in different sectors with different people. But yes, it's about those are the kind of core things that we're looking for from the personal statement. But a very good question. Do we have any other questions that might have? I'm just going to put my email address into the chat. So if you do have any questions after today, please feel free to get in touch with me. As I said, I am the Senior Admissions Officer for the School of Humanities. So if there is anything I can do to help, then please ask. But if you haven't got any, Kirsty, how many hours of face-to-face learning would we have, or will it be all online? At the moment, so we begin face-to-face teaching again this week, which is really exciting. I'm super stoked about being back in the classroom. Okay, so it depends on the class you picked, but per module between 2 and 3 hours per week, and then there will be the lectures, which will be online. So I would say, depending on the class you pick, about 2 to 3 hours face-to-face per week. So again, in first year, this could mean between 6 and 9 hours, and in third year, that would be about 6 hours potentially. Any other questions? We have another presentation in 2 minutes, so if there aren't any other questions, just want to say thank you once again for giving up your Saturday morning. We really appreciate you coming along to hear a bit about the Dundee history degree, and we hope that you put an application in, and we really hope to see you next year if you choose to come here. But hopefully what we've covered in today's presentation addresses all your questions, and say if you've got any other questions, please feel free to send me an email, which I've put in the chat box there. And also I want to really thank Moy and John for coming along to give their perspectives as well. So thank you very much. Enjoy your Saturday, and see you all soon.